So let's go ahead and take a look in this. By the way, welcome to part 3 of chapter 4. This is project planning and project infrastructure. And again, we are on part 3. So what we're taking a look at right now is the project resources and ways of organizing projects within an organization. Okay, so we have a matrix, we have project, we have a functional. Let's go ahead, we'll continue on because we're going to look at each one of these in detail from an advantages and disadvantages. So when we look at functional organization, notice the project coordinator there. There's definitely an increased flexibility. There's a breadth and depth of knowledge and experience that can be transferred throughout projects. There's less duplication. The challenge here, as you can see, if this is the project coordinator, is determining the authority, the responsibility, poor response time, poor integration, because there's not that focus that we might find with other models. Okay, now as we look at the project base, notice here we end up with some silos, if you will, okay, that didn't exist in the previous. So there's clear authority. We can see that the director is over manager A, B, C. These might be our project managers here. And here is the development team. Here is the project team, analyst, architect, developer, tester, again, the project team, right? There's improved communication because there's not a vast array of people communicating at each level. There's that hierarchy. There's definitely a high level of integration amongst the projects. However, disadvantages is that we end up with product isolation. Manager A might not know what's going on in Manager B's project that may in fact provide a value under the project portfolio. Okay, duplication of effort, because again, notice we have analysts here, analysts here, analysts here. So that may be a challenge. And then, projectitis, right? So just that focus of being involved, especially if we've got the analyst involved in multiple projects. Normally in this, we would have separate people doing it, okay? Finally, the matrix organization, so high level of integration here. Notice that people from the department, maybe the same person is involved, the same resource is involved within each project, or at least people within each department, okay? Definitely an improved communication, because if you notice overall, right, there's people that are going to communicate projects, managers are going to communicate, notice production manager, right? These people could be involved in the projects. They're going to distribute their resources amongst the projects, etc. Increase project focus, of course. But again, on the portfolio side, but then if you notice here, higher potential for conflict amongst employees, team members, may wonder who's my boss, because again, you've got this person here coming in, is this person in charge? Is the project manager in charge? Is the supervisor project group in charge? Are they still my manager even though I'm working under project B? Okay. Now, there's also, by the way, some great resources out on YouTube, because that tended to be confusing to me. I tend to focus on a functional group and risk silos, just making sure that as the project starts, that we've really looked at, what the strategic plans are for the organization, what other projects are going, how we can integrate if there needs to be integration, etc. Okay, so external project resources. Now here's the challenge, and I use this example, make or buy decision, right? Are we going to make tools? Are we going to make higher automation? Are we going to make the software, the IT program, whatever this project is, in-house, or are we going to buy it? My students get the opportunity to look at these decisions, this basic make or buy, because a lot of times it may be the value, even though it costs more to make it, we end up with a really customized product that fits our business scale, okay? Meaning there are things that we're competitively good at that we really want to focus on, that our customers have said, this is why we do business with you. And as you know, when we buy a product, it doesn't tend to be customized to your organization, Okay, so decisions, of course, project scope, how large is it? Do we have people in our organization that can do the jobs we need them to do on the projects? Availability of products, services in the marketplace. So again, this includes internally. Do we have a SQL Server programmer or administrator or report writer available within our organization? Or do we need to go out and quote unquote buy one? Do we need a contract for some services on this? Of course, cost, quality, terms and conditions. Even though we may have an expert in a certain area, that does not mean that we won't consider bringing in someone who's even more of an expert, maybe even a focused expert, to give us a new, fresh set of eyes, if you will. When I was the IT director at Columbia Aircraft, although we had experience with networks and security, we actually had a company that oversaw our security mechanisms so that we had a fresh set of eyes, because the fact is we knew basics of security. They did security all day long. So there's an example, looking at quality, we may need a SQL database programmer, and we have someone who can program in SQL. But that's very different than having an expert who can do it in half the time with twice the quality, normalizing the database, giving the database what is needed, maybe for integration with a cloud level of the app, security, etc. So, again, similar to the make and buy, that's why I put this in there. Business process outsourcing, including offshoring, is one option for acquiring external resources. So again, you might remember when it was all about outsourcing to India, because the fact is India had created an educational system that built subject experts. Okay. And the fact is their subject experts were under half, if not a quarter of the price per hour. Thus, the projects could save time. However, what we've since learned is that, remember we talked about communication. There was a real challenge with communication due to culture, due to language barriers, etc. Okay. So as we do look at outsourcing, though, we'll get more into detail on that. We can certainly do what's called full insourcing. These are 3 examples where full insourcing project resources are acquired internally. This may even mean that we hire additional staff or expertise, knowing that we have future projects where we're going to be able to value this person, put them to work, and get results or get value for our investment in the employee. Selective outsourcing, so specific project resources are acquired internally and others are external, so we're going to outsource. The challenge with this, I happen to like this if we have the talent to do it, because that means we have people engaged in the project within our organization, and then there's full outsourcing. Project resources and processes are all external. And the challenge with that is these are folks who are engaged in making money and consulting for us, but they don't have that strategy of knowing, what our corporate goals are, what our mission is, what our vision. They don't live those things on a daily basis. They also may have knowledge in an industry, but they don't have internal specialized knowledge into how we do business. Okay. So if you're going to do full outsourcing, you best have a great project plan that is very, very detailed. A lot of times we call these turnkey projects, and those can be a real challenge. I remember at Columbia Aircraft when we were looking at the new Garmin aviation system for our airplanes, we turnkeyed that with Garmin, and it was a real challenge. We missed the deadline. The project overruns were very high, etc. And the reason being, we as the company were more of a customer than involved in the team for the project, as I understand it. Moving on to procurement planning, begins by determining which project needs can be fulfilled internally. So again, we put that out there. A lot of times we know what IT staff we have, but the question is, what do we have in other resources? Do we have a CEO, or are we outsourcing our finance? Accounts payable, how are we doing that? Payroll, if it's a payroll project, we may have an accounts payable person, but if we're outsourcing that, they're more of a processor than they are an expert at accounts payable. So we may need to bring in an accounts payable person or a consultant in accounts payable if we're building some sort of system around, our accounting, if you will. I've got this little diagram here, plan procurement. I would suggest you pause, read it, conduct procurement, control procurement, close procurement. Again, who's an expert at this? Your local buyers. So if you're a manufacturer of a product, you have buyers that deal with supply chain all day long, and understand procurement, understand contracts, etc. That might be someone who is indeed an internal expert that you can bring into this process and say, okay, we understand you're not buying nuts and bolts, but we're going to buy a programmer. And how is that similar? And how might that be different? And what are the risks we need to look at? How, when, how many, where will these come from? Don't forget the risks too of what happens if we're outsourcing and that external resource doesn't meet their commitment. Right? So we want to make sure that they've been on projects before, that they have the experience in managing themselves as a company, organization, or individual, as well as integrating with our project. And of course, we want to put out a request for proposal, develop and solicit bids and quotes and get back these proposals to, well, we can offer this, while our competitor, we see that a competitor of theirs or another opportunity for us, they offer this, a third doesn't do this, but they do this, so that we can really compare. And also that request for proposal becomes a contract that we can then hold that external entity to. And of course, that does bring us to contracts. So when we're dealing with contracts, document signed by buyer and seller that defines the terms and conditions. Now, contracts are all over the board, folks. I've done contracts as an IT consultant and a project manager where, I felt comfortable. The project was small enough. It was a flat rate. We knew we could get it done. We've done it before. We knew we could commit to a certain hours and make that work, whereas sometimes time and materials projects work best because if it's something that we haven't done or that's outside of our expertise, we don't want to bid 50 hours of contract labor to find out it took us 100 hours to do that. That's a losing project. I always was taught by my dad, whatever I thought it was, add another 25%. If I came in under, then I didn't need to bill the client, and thus I did it for less than they expected me to do. They'll come back and have me do another contract, right? So as we look at contracts, fixed price, lump sum, we're going to look at some details of some other contracts. Go out to understand that, PM Bach Guide, go out there, look at those particular contracts. I've given you a YouTube here, so if you have the slide, if not, you can just quickly pause, copy this down. Great YouTube video talking about different kind of contracts that are associated with IT projects. So basic contracts that we see, a fixed price. Okay, so the risk is to the seller, price is fixed, cost overruns may not be passed on to the buyer. So if we're talking about, we need a database to do X, we just pay a flat rate for it. If it takes them twice the time, great. On the other hand, if we accepted 100 hours and then find out everybody could do it for 50, the risk, of course, is, there, right? So yes, the risk is primarily to the seller because we tend to underbid, if you will, to get the job. So cost plus fixed fee, so all costs are reimbursed. Buyer bears the risk limited to fixed amount, okay? So you can see here, that difference between cost plus incentive fee. So when we talk about that incentive fee, right, buyer bears the risk, and that should make sense to you, but seller is motivated to keep costs down, okay? Keep costs down because if we keep costs down, there's an incentive at the end for us doing that, finishing soon, etc. The challenge here is that whole, let's increase the stock price, because if we do, then I get, my stock is valued more, so I have an incentive to, increase my stock price. Here I have an incentive to turn in a product early that may not meet all the needs, if indeed I can do that, not have it audited, in detail. It looks like it works. Oh, great. Oh, but yeah, you promised us this and you promised us this, Time and materials. So the buyer is definitely at risk here. Buyer pays seller for all the time and materials and bears the risk. So we really need to manage these contracts very, very closely, because if we're paying for all the time and all the materials, and cost overruns in time are double, we're paying for that. So there really needs to be that agreement and that understanding and that regular communication and audit as to what is going to work, what is working, what contracts we are willing to accept. And of course, it really depends on the type of contract as we go through that. Now, I'm going to just go through this. I would encourage you to just pause and read this. This is going to be a little longer video because we don't have much more to cover. Okay, so go ahead, pause, read this. More detailed as the different cost plus percentage, cost fixed fee, etc. Again, you'll find additional information out. Now, time and materials contracts. So a hybrid of cost and reimbursement and fixed price contracts. Buyer pays the seller for both the time and materials required to complete the work. We talked about that. The challenge here is really managing, knowing that we have an ample time, we have cost for materials, we know things aren't going to change, but again, especially if we're outsourcing, we need to regularly be communicating that we are getting what we want as we expect it, and really be careful of cost overruns or time overruns, okay? As we get into the project environment, of course, first of all, conducive project environment, hugely important here, okay? And looking at the time, I don't want to rush this, so I'll probably go back and make this out to be a part 3 and a part 4. We'll see. A place to call home. So, this may be a project room. Maybe many projects are done there, but this is a place where we can meet, where we can create, where we can hold meetings. We know it's available, where we can get up from our desks and go work on the project, right? Because if we're at our desks, we're going to be bothered by people who are used to coming in. If that's what we're used to doing and serving people, or just communicating with people, or, maybe even just, talking the water cooler stuff. We need a place to go, to focus, to think, etc., where the whole team or individuals can work. We need the technology, so when we look at technology, we might need project management software. We might need more powerful computers. We're going to need a place to prototype, to hang things up and, and see if it sticks, if you will. Office supplies, of course, culture. Culture is a huge thing in business. It's especially a thing. Within the organization, what you're going to find is that a culture within the project gets created. And we want to make sure whatever that organizational culture is, that it's brought into the project. Okay. So if there's a culture of cooperation, a culture of creativity, a culture of, maybe even rigidity, we want to bring that into the project. What role will each team member play, within the culture? Okay. How will conflicts be resolved? Is this going to be a democratic vote? Is it going to be an authoritative thing where the project manager says, this is how we're going to do it? How do we bring people in without stifling creativity? Because if we want creativity, this is where we want it. We want to create amazing projects, amazing things, and we need to have that creativity. The challenge with that, of course, is if we get too creative, we're going to get into cost overruns, time overruns, etc. Okay. Finally, the project charter. Now, what I'm going to do is, again, I would encourage you to pause. I'm going to go to the content of the project charter. Here are the things that are included in the project charter. Notice we're bringing in the measurable organizational value that we've determined has led to us taking this next step of developing and documenting the project. Very, very important. We're going to do all this. What's the project start date? What's the end date if we have it? Timeline of project phases and milestones. We're going to get into this as we talk about CPM and Gantt charts, creating graphical representations of these, because a lot of times that date looks like it's achievable, but as we put it on a graph, as we put it on a CPM, we figure out, oh, well, that's actually got to be done before this, or this has got to be done before that. And so we get a better look at the true project. What are the reviews, the review dates? When we talk about milestones, don't forget to celebrate. And a milestone may be we've completed the project charter for the project, and we're ready to move on to taking our words that are in the project charter and placing them into action to create whatever it is that the project is to create. How are we going to deal with risk, quality issues? What are our resources? Who does what? When are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? Why are they going to do it? Let's not forget that. Why are they going to do it? How is it important? Of course, administration, who's in charge of communication, scope, quality, change, etc. Change management, again, goes back to governance, where we might have a project governance committee that says, okay, we want to keep this on track. So when you guys all come up with wonderful ideas of how to make the product better or the project better, we need to bring that back to somebody and say, you know what, that's a great idea, but we need to complete the project, get it off the ground, if you will, and then we'll figure out how to make it fly faster. So hopefully that makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Take care.